Blitz day 3. Our topic today is linear functions. So in this first question, we're reviewing finding slope from 2 points. Now, if you want to, you can have scratch paper, and if you want to actually draw an XY axis and plot these points, you're welcome to do that. But slope formula, how we algebraically find slope, is to find the change in y over the change in x. So that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If you need to write the words to help you, it's the change in y over the change in x. Okay, graphically, the way you think of that is rise over run. Okay, what's the vertical change over the horizontal change? Okay, so what I'm going to do for this problem is I'm going to label. I'm going to label my first point as x1, y1, and my second point as x2, y2. And then I'm going to plug that in to my formula. Okay, it's the change in y over the change in x. There's a minus in the numerator and denominator. So my y1 and x1 are going to go on this side. Okay, so x1 is on the bottom here, y1 is on the top here, and then y2 is up here, and x2 is down here. So I get those plugged into the formula where they go. I already put the paper in the hanging folders there.
She said to email her, so I'll be about
it. Okay. All right, so then we calculate in the numerator and denominator. So -2 minus 5 is -7. And in the denominator, -4 minus 4 is -8. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 7/8 doesn't reduce, so we just leave it as positive 7/8. So graphically, if you chose to plot these points on a scratch paper, you could actually count the distance between the points, and you would have to go up 7 and over 8 between the 2 points. Okay, plot the 2 points, and from left to right, okay, it would be up 7, right 8, because it's positive. Okay, remember, a positive slope goes in this direction. Okay? Now remember slope formula? Okay, and slope, we use M to label slope. All right, now writing equations of line. Okay, you need to know slope. So either you're going to be told the slope, or you'll be given information where you can find the slope, or you'll be given an equation in just a different format than you want, and you can rearrange it to see your slope. Okay, so right now, I've got x and y on the same side of the equation, and they ask us to put this in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, and remember that in slope-intercept form, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to take this equation over here. If you need to draw a line down the equal sign to separate, you can. Okay, and then I'm going to move things around to get this solved for y. So first, I'm going to move the x term by subtracting, because that's the opposite operation here. So I'm left with 3y. Now the 24 and the 6 cannot combine because one has an x, one doesn't. So I'm going to write the x term first and then the constant. Now I need to get rid of the coefficient in front of y. That 3 is being multiplied, so the opposite is to divide. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay, and everything gets divided. So the -6x gets divided by 3, which leaves us with -2x. And the -24 gets divided by 3, which leaves us with -8. So that is my equation in slope-intercept form. And now I need to identify what part of that is the slope. In this format, mx plus b, and m is the slope. So what's my slope? Can you see the number in this corresponding spot? The coefficient in front of x in our equation here? -2. Good. So -2 is our slope. What part's the y-intercept? The b value. -8. Good. All right. This next one wants our equation in slope-intercept form again. But instead of giving us the equation, they give us 2 points. So we have to start this one like we did number 1 with 2 points, and we have to find the slope first. Okay, so I'm going to find slope first. Use slope formula. I'm going to label my x1, y1, x2, y2, just like I did up here. Okay, so my x1 is the 7, my y1 is the 4, my x2 is the 6, and my y2 is the 3. Now in slope formula, remember there's a minus sign, and it's y2 minus y1. Oh, I accidentally put y2 on 2 of those. That's supposed to be a y1. I think I said y1 and then didn't write it. Relabel that. X1, Y1. All right. So it's Y2 minus Y1. And then it's X2 minus, then will work. X1. So when I calculate here in the numerator, it keeps changing colors on me. In the numerator, 3 minus 4 is -1. And in the denominator, 6 minus 7 is also -1. What is anything divided by itself? 1. Okay, and a negative divided by negative is a positive. So this is just a +1. So my slope is 1. Now they want me to write slope-intercept form of an equation, but all I know is slope and some points. I don't know the y-intercept because these points that were given to me, neither of those is the y-intercept. The y-intercept would be on the y-axis. The x would be 0. And x is not 0 on either of these. So you have to use point slope because we know a point and we know a slope. So we have to start with this form and then we'll rearrange it to get it to slope intercept. So it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so again, our m, we said up here that m, that's slope. Okay, we calculated that already to be 1. So m is 1. That's going to get plugged in here. And then the x1 and y1, okay, we labeled over here, x1 and y1. Those are going to get plugged in over here for these two. Okay, so I'm going to make those substitutions now. So y minus, and then y1 is 4, m is 1, x minus, and x1 is 7. So then it just becomes solving for y, because we want it in slope-intercept form. Well, if you have a slope, you want to distribute it to the terms in the parenthesis. But here, that's just a 1. Is multiplying by 1 going to change anything? It's not. So that's just going to be x minus 7. Okay, so we've got y minus 4 equals x minus 7. Now I just need to move that term to the other side. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And that's going to leave me with y equals x minus 3. And that is in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b form. Good? Or is very similar. They want slope-intercept form, but we're given slope and a point and slope. Point, slope, form is what we're going to have to start with. Now this one's going to go a little quicker because we don't have to find the slope like we did in number 3. They give us the slope. Okay, so I'm ready to jump straight into point slope form. Okay, my y1, if you want to label it over here again, you can. This is x1, y1. So my y1 is 4. My slope is -3/2. X minus, and then x1 is -6. Notice how I have a minus from the equation. Okay, there's a minus in the equation there, and then I plug in a negative. What happens when you have minus a negative? That becomes a plus. So that's x plus 6. Now we still have to distribute our m, which this time it is going to make a difference because it's not just a 1. So I have to multiply -3/2 times x, which gives me -3/2 x. And then -3/2 times +6, which gives me negative. And then you've got 6 times 3 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So -9. Now on the left side, we have not done anything. We still have y minus 4. But now we're ready to move that constant by adding the 4 over. And we get y equals -3/2 x minus 5. And that would be slope-intercept form. So we went from point slope form to slope-intercept form, because that's the way they asked us to write this equation. So far, so good? All right, so the front is really the linear equations review part of this. The back, we're going to review solving. But these, just notice, these just have x. None of these have a y. Okay, so this is reviewing solving for a single variable equation. So this is just get the variable by itself. Okay, isolate the variable. If you want to write that or say that up here, solve the equation just means isolate the variable. The variable is the letter. In all of these examples, that letter is x. Okay, so an isolate means to get it by itself. Okay, so get the x alone. And we're going to see what it comes out equal to when we get it alone. So I like to help you by separating the left and right side of your equation, if that helps you keep your stuff organized. Now, on the left and right, look to see, is there anything I can simplify? And on the right side, there is. I've got 2 x terms that can combine. 5x and 3x is 8x. Okay, now there's nothing else to combine over here. That's an x and a constant. And on the left, we've got an x and a constant. So nothing to do on the left and right. I'm ready to start moving terms. So I'm going to get the x's to one side. So since that 8x is already on the right, I'm just going to subtract this 1x over to join it. And that's going to leave me with -1 equals 7x minus 8. Now I got x's to the right, so I'm going to move my constants to the left. So I'm going to move that 8 by opposite operation, which is plus 8. So that becomes 7 equals 7x. Then I've got a coefficient I need to divide out to get x alone. So when I get x alone, 7 divided by 7 is 1. Now remember, when you're solving for a variable, you can always check your answers by plugging the number back into the original equation. So if I took a 1 and I plugged it in up here, 1 minus 1 would be 0 on the left. And then on the right, 1 times 5 plus 3 times 1. So that would be 5 plus 3 is 8 minus 8. That would also come out to 0. So you can check that these numbers work and actually make the left side equal to the right side. If it was a multiple choice question, you could simply take your answer choices and plug them in to check and see which one works. If you forget the steps in between, work backward from your answer choices. Okay. All right, on number 6, if I separate the left and right side of this equation, on the left side, there's nothing to simplify. On the right side, I can combine this into a 7x. 5x plus 2x is 7x. Okay, the rest of this stays the same. Now, the only x term is on the right, so there's no x's to move. I'm just going to move my constants, which would be -2, which would give me -14 equals 7x. And then I'm ready to divide out that coefficient of 7. So I got x alone, and it equals -2. So far, so good? All right, let's try number 7. So on number 7, if I split the left and right side of my equation, you can go ahead and split all these if that's how you like to do it. Actually, these are misnumbered. I'm going to do this number 7 on the right first. You'll see why in a minute. I'll come back to that other one on the right. So let's do this one over here first. So on the left side, I can simplify by distributing to get rid of these parentheses. So that becomes -3 times 4x is -12x, and -3 times -8 is +24. So I end up with 24 equals -36. The x's are only on the left, no x's to move, so I'm ready to move my constant, which is going to be to subtract 24. So that leaves me with -12x equals -60. And then I'm ready to divide out my coefficient of -12. I've got x alone, and it equals +5. All right, I skipped this other one for a reason. Okay, we're going to look at these last two. These are special cases. All of these so far, we found a solution, didn't we? We got a number solution, a single solution. Watch what happens in this one. When I've split the left and right, see if I need to move anything. I do need to distribute this -4. So that's going to become -4 plus 24x. And that's equal to 24x minus 22. Some of you may notice it already. Both sides have positive 24x. What that means is when I go to try to move the x's to the same side, they reduce, they cancel out to 0 on both sides, don't they? So there's no more x's left. So all that I'm left with is negative 22 equals negative 4. If this is a special case, if your variable, in this case x, cancels out on both sides, you have no variable left, you're either going to have a true statement or a not true statement. Is this true or not true? This is not true. Negative 22 is not equal to negative 4. So I'm going to put a big slash through that because this is not true. What that means is if you're left with a statement like this, a number equal to a number, and it's not true, there is no solution. Okay. Now let's look at this last one, number 8. If I simplify on the left side, I can see I'll combine these x's to 7x, and I'll combine these constants, plus 4 and a minus 7 to a negative 3. And there's nothing to simplify on the right. That's just 7x minus 3. What do you notice? Does anybody notice it yet? The left and right side are exactly the same, aren't they? So if I go to try to move my x term, my variable term, doesn't matter which side I try to move it to, I would be trying to move it by subtracting. What is up with this pen? Okay, I'd be subtracting 7x on both sides, and it would cancel, and I'd be left with negative 3 equals negative 3. Now, if you tried to add 3 to both sides, you'll end up with 0 equals 0. Okay, you can stop here because your x's are gone. Is negative 3 equal to negative 3? So this time, our x's canceled, and we're left with a statement, and this time, it's true. So instead of no solution, there are infinitely many solutions. You can plug in any value, any real number, and it's a solution. Okay, so maybe you would write that as all real numbers are solutions. Okay, so those are the two special cases. If the variables cancel out completely on both sides, you're either going to have no solution because you're left with a not true statement, or you're going to have infinitely many solutions because you're left with a true statement. All right, if y'all take a look at, so our calendar here, we did day 3 today. I've activated in Delta Math here. You should see day 1, 2, and 3. Day 1 is past due. Day 1 is from last week. We talked about geometry basics. If you have not finished day 1, it's still here available at 80% credit. Okay, but you might want to work on day 2 and 3 first because you can still get full credit on those. Okay, both of these are due by the end of the week, which is Friday, so the 7th. Okay, so both of these are due by the end of the week. You can work on whichever you need to right now. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you're working on. They have the same due date. Okay, day 2, you can look at the notes we took yesterday. Day 3, this is what we just covered, is what you're going to be practicing. Okay, if you finish both of those and you haven't finished day 1, go back to that geometry basics to review that and practice. If you have not turned in your reading writing grade, okay, that was part of the geometry basics. That's why the geometry basics took 2 days last week, because I had you writing all those definitions for those geometry terms as we reviewed and told you that was your reading writing grade. I'm going to pass back the ones that I got and graded and entered. If you don't get one back, you never turned it in. Okay, you can check Skyward and see you'll have a 0 in there for that right now. Okay, so check your Skyward, see if there's anything that you're missing and need to do, and be working on your TSIA blitz practice.